Welcome to the Working Well podcast and lesson 13 in our 52 life lessons series. Let me start with a simple and perhaps slightly uncomfortable question. When was the last time you sat in actual silence? I don't mean the quiet music in the background type, no meditation apps that are whispering affirmations at you, and not mindfully scrolling your phone when it's on Do Not Disturb. I mean real silence. No notifications, no emails, no Slack pings, no podcasts, no audiobooks, no productivity hacks. Just you, your breath, and your thoughts. If you're like most people, the answer is, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I haven't thought about that. And that answer says a lot. It means it's not part of your regular day or your performance system. For many people, it's been so long since they sat in silence that they have trouble comprehending what silence is truly like. See, we live in a 24/7 environment that's surrounded with noise, stimulation, urgency, and interruption. Most of us wake up to an alarm, reach for the phone, consume information before we're even fully awake, and then spend the rest of the day reacting. Between messages, meetings, opinions, breaking news, fires to put out at work, fires with the family. Then at night, instead of slowing down, we distract ourselves until we're exhausted enough to fall asleep. Rinse and repeat this day in and day out, and that's life for most people. The irony is, the busier, the more responsible, the more important our lives become, the less space we create to actually think. And after coaching hundreds of executives and senior leaders and leading as a CEO myself for 20 years, I can say this with complete confidence. Creating intentional space for silence, solitude, and deep thinking, it's not a luxury. It's a performance multiplier. And don't get me wrong, this isn't Tim likes quiet mornings. It's not my opinion. There's solid research backing this up. And one fascinating study published in Brain Structure and Function found that periods of silence, even just a couple of minutes, activate the brain's default mode network. Now, this is a system responsible for self-reflection, memory consolidation, creativity, and meaning making. In simple terms, silence gives your brain access to deeper thinking than it can do when it's constantly stimulated. Some more research from Harvard has shown that mindfulness and focused attention practices are associated with reduced stress hormones, improved emotional regulation, and better decision-making under pressure. Now, not surprisingly, these are all traits that we want desperately in leaders. And then there's one study that I found both fascinating and extremely disturbing. In the journal Psychological Science, they asked people to do something incredibly simple. Sit alone in a room. No phone, no music, no distractions, just their thoughts. But what they did ask, or they gave people a choice on, was they could sit in silence, or they had the option to give themselves a mild electrical shock instead of sitting in silence. And a surprising number of people chose the shock. Not once, repeatedly. Let that sink in for a moment. Faced with the choice between sitting quietly with their own thoughts or pressing a button that literally shocks them, people went with, yeah, I'll take the zap. This isn't because the shock was fun. It's because for many people, silence felt worse than the shock. What this really tells us is not that people love pain, it's that we've become profoundly uncomfortable with our inner world. When the noise stops, there's nothing buffering us from our thoughts, our doubts, our emotions, unfinished conversations, or the low-level anxiety we've been carrying around like a background app that we forgot to close. So instead of sitting with it, we distract. We scroll on our phones. We refresh email. We check Slack. Again, we look busy. We do anything to avoid being alone with our own mind. And here's the wild part. The very thing we're avoiding is the thing that gives us clarity, creativity, and emotional regulation. Silence doesn't create chaos. It reveals what's already there. Think of it like turning the lights on in a messy room. Whether or not you created the mess, you can't ignore it once the lights are on. And until you get comfortable being in that room or clean up the mess, your brain will do just about anything to turn the lights back off, even if that means pressing a shock button. Now, I have to be very, very clear here. Embracing silence does not mean you have to move to the Himalayas and shave your head or sit cross legged for hours chanting. It means consciously curating your schedule to include moments of silence, solitude, and yes, even boredom. It also doesn't mean that you need to meditate in the traditional sense. Meditation, it's simply one form of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to intentionally direct your focus and attention in any given moment. And that could be your breath, your body, your thoughts, or just nothing at all. Even small doses make a meaningful difference. Now, I was very skeptical of meditation and mindfulness for many years, and I'm much more familiar with mindfulness. Meditation just never sat well with me. And one book that really helped me reframe this was titled Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. It's super practical, it's honest, and it's actually very funny. He gives people permission to stop taking mindfulness so seriously. And Dan Harris, he debunks the myth that meditation requires this calm, perfect mind, perfect conditions, or a specific personality type. And in the book, he talks about a famous quote that I think sums this up very perfectly. The quote is, "You should sit in meditation for 20 minutes a day, unless you're too busy. Then you should sit for an hour." The point isn't the time. The point is that when life is most chaotic, mindfulness is needed more, not less. Interestingly, I see this same principle play out on a weekly basis with my coaching practice. When work and life feel overwhelming, many people's first instinct is to cancel their coaching sessions. I get messages like, "I just need to catch up," or "I've got to deal with this chaos first and then we can do our coaching." Yet the clients who protect that time, who don't cancel, consistently see the biggest breakthroughs. Why? Because the coaching session becomes a container, a structured pause in their insanely busy day. It's their scheduled opportunity to step out of the fray, recognize what's happening mentally, physically, emotionally, and then approach their day from an upgraded frame of reference. They leave calmer, more focused, and more decisive. Not just feeling better, but actually performing better. And the key insight is that you don't need a coach to create moments like this. Though, as a coach, it can definitely help, and I highly recommend coaching. But every human has the direct control over how they use their attention and their mindset in any given moment. Early in my entrepreneurial career, I was constantly on the go. So I believe that downtime was for low performers. If I had 10 minutes before a meeting, I was sending emails. In the car, I was listening to audiobooks. At the gym, I was even responding to texts between sets. Riding my bike, audiobooks again. From the moment I woke up until I went to bed, I was on. I was maximizing the time I had for learning and growth. And to be fair, that efficiency served me well in many ways. But what was missing was consciously curated downtime for both mental and physical regeneration. I didn't slow down until I was exhausted. And even then, I was still on call or reading business books. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what it meant to step out of the fray and to curate that silence. And it wasn't until I was right on the edge of burnout that I realized how much clarity, creativity, and resilience I was leaving on the table. Since then, I've started intentionally creating space for silence on most days. For me, that's usually first thing in the morning or the last thing before I go to bed, but often it includes micro breaks during the day. And when I notice myself feeling scattered, especially I've got strong ADD tendencies, when I'm ping-ponging from one task to the next, I consciously pause, I breathe, I sit in silence. And almost every time, I get back on track faster than if I tried to power through. And I have a much higher quality of work after that pause. So here's the leadership lens on this, how silence can develop leadership skill. I found that leaders who never slow down eventually lose perspective. They become reactive instead of intentional, busy instead of effective. They're available, but they're not present. Silence sharpens judgment. Solitude restores perspective on the bigger picture. Stillness reconnects you to what actually matters. Now, this isn't about doing less. It's about creating the conditions to do the right things better. So here's my challenge for you this week. Start small. 2 minutes. No phone, no music, no agenda, just sit. Breathe, notice. Let your nervous system downshift. Let your brain do the deeper work that it's designed to do. Because clarity doesn't come from more noise. It comes from space. And in a world that's constantly demanding your attention, choosing silence might be one of the most powerful performance decisions you make. So life is loud. Growth requires quiet. Seek silence, seek solitude, and see what begins to emerge. Thank you for joining me. Please post your thoughts, comments, your feedback. Of course, feel free to share this episode with people that you feel may benefit from it. Or if you hated it, you feel free to forward it to your worst enemy. And I'll see you for the next episode. That wraps up another episode of the Working Well podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, which guests or topics would you like to see featured on the show? Message me through LinkedIn or on the contact page of timborys.com with your ideas. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tim Borys with Fresh Wellness Group, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.